Okay, but so is that an extreme position? Well, perhaps. But here's an American philosopher writing, I don't know, 50 years ago, something like that. D.C. Williams. He says, time flows only in the sense in which a line flows or a landscape recedes into the west. That is, it is an ordered extension. And each of us proceeds through time only as a fence proceeds across a farm. Oh, well, that clears that up, doesn't it? So time is just kind of, it doesn't flow any more than these spatial features flow. See all the trouble we've gotten ourselves into? First we imagined that time was something like the tape measure. Well, the tape measure measures space. We pretended that maybe time was like that. And then, clocks, and then the diagram of four-dimensional space-time, where we pretend that the time axis is sort of like the time dimension is a bit like the space dimensions. And here we are. Yeah, sure, it's all just, time is like space. Don't worry about it. It just sits there. I don't know. So if this is true, and this is something I think very close to representative of the mainstream view, I think, in physics and philosophy, both, these days. But it leaves a lot of things unanswered, right? If time is an illusion, I mean, what sort of an illusion is it? How does it come about? Now, the natural world, or the world we experience, of course, is full of illusions. We felt for a long time that the sky is this sort of vast dome above our heads. And it looks like one. When you understand a bit more about the distances to the planets and stars, you realize it isn't quite like that. We think there's a mighty hunter in the winter sky. We call him Orion. But of course, eventually we learn that it's sort of our imaginations that are making a hunter out of that grouping of stars. Solid objects, allegedly solid objects like this, really aren't that solid once you understand that, there's a lot of space between the nuclei of the atoms and the electrons. It's really mostly empty space, but it feels to our touch as being solid. Well, we sort of understand how those illusions work, but is time, what sort of an illusion is time? Is it anything at all like those, or is it something much more peculiar? I don't think there's an easy answer to that. When I talked to Paul Davies, and he's a well-known physicist and science writer, and he himself has written also a book about time. I chatted with him in Arizona, and he mentioned this analogy. Simple enough. I'm not exactly sure how helpful it is, but he gives the analogy of the spinning chair. When you were a kid, you probably spun around on an office chair, and if you do it quickly and then come to a stop, it seems like the universe is spinning around you. Well, of course, the universe isn't spinning around you. That's a trick that, it's kind of like what Julia Barber said. It's a trick that your mind has made, a mistake that your mind has made. And of course, you know it. Your reason takes over, and you realize that if you just wait 5 or 10 seconds, the universe will stop spinning. My screen went dead. Is it battery power, or let's see, something's not terribly wrong. We're almost at the end, but we're not there yet. I don't think we ever plugged in the laptop. We're almost done, don't worry, just a couple minutes left. And if time really is an illusion, then don't worry about it, right? We've done this already. I can wing it if necessary. There was basically one picture left. And, okay, well let's. I'll just keep talking while it comes back to life. So is it an illusion like that? Is this? I better stand over here by the mic. Yeah. So is time an illusion in this? It's, as Davies suggested, like the way a spinning chair makes you think that the universe is rotating around you. Well, maybe. Or I guess another possibility. Oh, good. Or another. Thanks very much. Another possibility is that we've made some kind of a terrible mistake somewhere, a profound error somewhere along the way. There are people who support that line of reasoning. One of them is Lee Smolin, also at the Perimeter Institute at Waterloo, although he's actually based here in Toronto. And when I spoke to him, actually he says this in one of his books from a couple of years ago, we have to find a way to unfreeze time, to represent time without turning it into space. This gets back to this whole idea, you know, these tricks that we've been playing pretending time is like space. He says, I have no idea how to do this. I can't conceive of a mathematics that doesn't represent a world frozen in eternity. So, you know, I talked to all these different smart people, and none of them, you know, I mean, it would be great if one of them told me what time is. None of them really did. And you know, I fear that we're just left with time being what clocks measure, and we may have to get used to that. They did, some of them say what time wasn't. Roger Penrose said it's definitely not a steady universal progression. All right, it's definitely not that thing that Newton thought was common sense about time. So yeah, it's interesting. You'd think after Newton and Einstein and all that, we'd have some higher degree of confidence about how time works. But some of the most basic questions that we can ask, very basic things including time's flow and just the existence of time, remain a mystery. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. We'll take questions, and for those, I mean, if anyone wants to run off, that's okay, but we'll do some questions, and then I do have copies of the book that, you know, you buy them, I'm happy to sign them, so. Do you want to field them, or should I field them?
Yeah, we're going to do about 15 minutes. Unfortunately, CFI does have a timeline that we do abide by. So about 15 minutes. Please line up at the microphone if you can, and we will have to enforce that by cutting somebody off. So apologies in advance to whoever that ends up being.
Will there still be time for?
Oh yeah, we'll do milling around and all of that, of course, and we'll set up.
Yeah.
Give you a station.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. If you do have to go, I should say that somebody will be out there with a sheet if you want to sign up to get our newsletter, which again is going out next week. That would be to your advantage. So please.
Go ahead.
It seems that a good deal of the theorizing is with regards to what is observed rather than the nature of the observer and the mechanics of the observer. And how much, let's say, what the phenomenon of what we, the observers, call time is implicated in the workings of what registers with the observer and how it registers. That is, you know, human perception, the neurology of the brain, how the brain quantizes. And I'm just wondering, is there theory that you are aware of that is exploring that more, let's say, than is mentioned in what you've done tonight?
Okay, thanks. That's a good question, and there's a lot in there. Yeah, the role of the observer. So there's many things there. I probably can't address them all. I mean, quantum theory, of course. Quantum theory, one of the funny things about it is that it seems to distinguish the thing being observed from the observer who's doing it. And I'm not an expert on quantum theory. Well, I did take some classes on it way back when, but I've forgotten everything. But we never got into the good stuff anyway. I mean, it was all about problem solving. But yeah, so maybe quantum theory has something to say about the flow of time. Paul Davies has suggested the place maybe where it comes in. Some of you will know this term, the collapse of the wave function. You know, when you finally open the box to take a look at Schrodinger's cat, and you see the cat as being either alive or dead. The state of the system has collapsed. And that seems to be irreversible. I mean, once you see that the cat is alive, he won't go back to being half alive, half dead. Or if you see him, dead, he won't go back. So there does seem to be something directional about that. But I don't know. I mean, Paul Davies speculates, there's a couple of paragraphs in his book sort of wondering about this. I can't really add to it. But the other thing you brought up is, neurology, the brain. Well, this, I suppose ultimately everything is going to have some kind of an answer there, because of course the window on all of this,